Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Staffen webinar on the digital roadmap. Today, the webinar will be held in English. Before we have as a main speaker Klaus Mahler, a German consultant who will speak, of course, in English. And we have also some participants from abroad, so it makes sense to have this webinar in English. Before starting, a very short presentation of Staffen and Neonex. For the person who does not yet know us, very shortly, Staffen is a German consultancy specialized in the lean approach. We have been working for 30 years into the lean consultancy activities. And we have a worldwide activities. Here you can see our branches worldwide in the United States, Mexico, Brazil, China, and also in Europe. And we are trying to deliver value on three topics, let's say. The first one is the excellent process. That means to optimize what I call the hard part of the company. That means the production line, production optimization, replenishment, logistics, supply chain. But since, as a lean thinker, we think that lean is not only a bunch of tools, but it is a question of mentality. We have also to deliver excellent leadership. That means to work with the person in order to have, let's call it, lean behavior. Both of them, of course, are aimed to the most important value, that is the excellence result that we hope to be able to deliver to the company, to help the company to achieve with our support. And we have also received some award. The most important that we are proud of is the Forbes award as the best, world best consulting firm that we have awarded for 2 years in a row, last year and this year. And as I said before, we are working on the two pillars, process excellence and leadership excellence, people involvement. And the topic we are working on are the four represented in this picture. We are today talking about the digitalization and 4.0. And for digitalization 4.0, our main partner is Neonex, a German company specialized in digitalization. They have both consultant expert in lean and consultant expert in digitalization. And in the coming webinar, we will have as a speaker Klaus Mahler, and he will introduce himself later on. He can also add, of course, more specification or more detail about Neonex. So this is who we are. What are we talking about today? As you know, it's the digital roadmap. We had some months ago a first webinar on the digital assessment, and now we are making a step ahead after the assessment to understand which could be the roadmap for a proper digitalization of the company. And so the target, the agenda for today is to think about the fact that, of course, no discussion, that the digitalization is a strategic support to increase the competitiveness of the company in the long run in this highly volatile market. But we have to take into account, never forget, that in our opinion, digitalization is not the end itself, is a mean to achieve a result. So we have to take care to be smart. That for a lean thinker means, above all, or first of all, not to digitalize wastes. So the question, how can we implement a smart digitalization? With smart digitalization, we mean a digitalization that is really helpful to support the company to achieve their competitive targets. And so the topic of this webinar is to understand which are the methods and experiences of the Gemba. And of course, as I already told you, Klaus Mahler will be our main speaker, and he will explain which is the Staffen Neonex approach to digitalize the company properly. with a lot of example from the Gemba, from the field, from our customer, and the trip we have done with them in order to improve their competitiveness. So that's the the description of our webinar. Before starting, I would like to spend some small words on what I mean with smart digitalization, statement that I have already mentioned. Of course, I repeat, no discussion, digitalization is a strategic tool to increase the competitiveness. When we talk about digitalization, we mean this bunch of approach, method, tools. It is the industrial Internet of Things, the IoT, the advanced human-machine interface, the industrial analytics, the advanced automation, the cloud manufacturing, and the additive manufacturing or 3D printing. So these 6 elements are all together what we mean with digitalization. We can say that we have, at the end of the day, 2 main categories. One addressing the information processing and decision making, the industrial analytics, addressed to analyze data. And then we have another categories more aimed to support the operative activities, such as, for example, the additive manufacturing that is not processing information, but is helping the production to produce in a different way. So we have these 2 main categories, but this is what we mean with digitalization, and what I was saying, that of course this is strategic, we have to use these tools, no discussion, but we must take care of not digitalizing waste. That means implement digital tools not because they are the hype of the moment, but because they fit the company strategy and the business processes needs. Just to make 3 simple examples of what we mean with digitalization of waste. I can mention, for example, first, the warehouse. Of course, the automated warehouse is beneficial because we have a lot of material. It is sometimes difficult to collect and move the material into the warehouse. Sometimes it's even difficult to find what I'm looking for, the material I need for the production. And so which could be the best solution when an automatic warehouse that will solve all this problem. But from the lean thinker point of view, the question before is, do we need all this warehouse? Are all the material into the warehouse needed? Shall we reduce them before automated? We shall reduce the warehouse volume mainly by 2 actions, by reducing the throughput time, that of course reduce the working process, and by standardizing, that reduce the number of codes. So the lean thinker says, before reduce the warehouse, or right size the warehouse, let's say, and then automate. Second example is the AGV or similar devices. Of course, we have to move material into the plant, no way. But also in this case, have we the right layout? Is that correct, the movement of the material into the plant? Probably all of you are familiar with the famous statement, the material tourism. And so first, work on rationalize the flow of material and only then automate the solution. Last but not least, and this is for me very important, is the example of the email. The organization is a bunch of persons who are trying to achieve a result that the single person are not able to achieve by themselves, of course. But in order for the person to collaborate, they have to communicate. And so the communication is the most important pillar into an organization with at least 2 persons. And the simple solution that I usually see to the factory, to the company, is that I load the person of all the possible communication devices, thinking that more communication means more information. But I think this is not the case. More information is not more information and better decision making. Herbert Simon, many years ago, awarded a Nobel Prize with his theory of the bounded rationality. He said that the men and the women are bounded rationality animal, and so they are not able to process too much information at the same time. So we have to organize properly the information in order to really support the person and not just give them tools that can, how can I say, accelerate their communication process and to increase the quantity of information that they are not able to manage properly in order to take a decision. So that's the introduction. Now I'm very happy to give room to Klaus Mahler, who will explain to you how I can avoid the digitalization of waste and to have a proper digital roadmap to improve the competitiveness through the analysis of the business processes and through the identification of the use case, what is useful because it's useful for the business, not only because it's digital. And of course, at the end of the day, to elaborate a digital roadmap that explains where I am, when I want to go, and which the path to arrive there. So that's all from my side. Now it's a very pleasure for me to give room to a very expert of digitalization, my friend Klaus Mahler from Germany. Please, Klaus.
Thank you to Giancarlo for the introduction. A few words to Neonex, just 2 sentences. Neonex is an implemented-oriented management consultancy with the goal of improving the performance of manufacturing companies, especially against the background of the opportunities digitalization and automation is offering. We call the holistic view of this goal smart factory and connected supply chain. To my person, my name is, as Giancarlo said, is Klaus Mahler. I'm 58 years old. I worked roughly 30 years in 3 bigger group of companies in several functions. The red thread through my career is everything has to do with operations, the supply chain management. I'm a lean guy from the origin, so lean based, especially over the last 15 years, everything has to do with digitalization. And in this context, with the change management, because when you start this digital journey, a lot of things has to do with change in your companies. Next slide, please. Focus for today is supply chain operations. So we are talking about the operational part in the plant, not talking about all the rest what you see here now on the screen, but and this is always important for me, even when the focus here for the digital journey is in the operations, always keep in mind that processes have to be thought through end to end. The best example for me is when companies start to implement web shops, please ensure that you think the entire process from the customer to the plants, to the suppliers and back, to have here a good solution. In a lot of cases, it's just the fact that you have to design a nice web shop, but at the end of the day, all the processes behind are really just not good. So that's the topic for today, talking about digitalization roadmap in the operations and supply chain management. Next slide, please. Why are companies starting to think about to implement digitalization? There were some requirements increasing, especially over the last 5-8 years, which are really driving the companies in a direction that they have to rethink their approaches, what they did so far. Complexity is increasing, variances are increasing, all these things. You know all this from your own plants. The target which is coming out of this is people face the need to speed up their processes. Lead time is becoming more and more important. To have inventory standing around somewhere is not only that you have a cash flow reduced, the even more critical part is that you run the risk that you have to scrap it. The cost perspective, of course, on the one hand side, really reduction of costs, but on the other hand side, that is something we will see in the one or other part too. You just have the need to automate something because you do not get qualified people. And last but not least, to reduce quality efforts, especially when you are able to go in a direction to detect deviations very early, you are able to reduce the costs for poor quality. So another very important brick in the wall. So these are some topics why companies are starting their digital journey. Next slide, please. And I want to give you now a very short and pragmatic overview. What's the combination out of digital and what's lean and so on. At the end, we are always talking about a smart production. The lean house on the right, that is what you know. Cooperation, leadership, that is what you learned. Having shop floor meetings, going on the Gemba, all these things, taking account the flow, the rhythm, the pull principle, the zero defects, and at the end of the day, combine this with the continuous improvement process. So a typical lean approach, do not want to go here too much in detail. Just want to give you some examples where digital could support really in a very good way. Starting with the continuous improvement topic. When you are able to get all your decisions and improvements data-driven, because data are available, you are able to ensure the availability of correct data. You are able to ensure one source of truth. So the data are not only available, they are correct. Then you have a good basis to start your processes in a different way. Another important point is the digitalized deep value stream. When you normally go in a value stream design in the typical lean approach, you are taking care on your value stream, thinking about the top 5 article numbers, doing your value stream design, you implement it, and after the first 2 months you see it's not running because for the other 500 article numbers it's not working. With a digital approach, you are able to do value stream designs really for the entire value streams and for all articles on all levels. This gives you completely different opportunities. And last but not least, the real-time data-driven leadership. That is something we will come later on too, because this real-time aspect and availability of data, this has really impact on your leadership, on the leadership processes, and on your organization. And that is something we will talk on about later on a little bit more in detail. Next slide, please. Again, coming to why companies are starting the digital journey. What are the most important points? Efficiency and effectiveness, that's rated as number 1. Cost reduction, of course, it's always one of the points we want to achieve is process optimization. But then you see directly transparency in processes as number 3. And you maybe know this from your day-to-day business too, the importance to get real-time information, for example, about an order status or about the status of a delivery from the supplier. This is becoming more and more important. And the customer wants to have this. So it's not only a nice to have, it's a must. You have to have this. More and more people want to work remote, especially when you want to hire high qualified people, to have really best educated people in the 3-shift model is becoming more and more difficult. So thinking here about remote work is becoming more important. The interfaces with customers, one example I already mentioned, that was with the web shops and so on. But this is not only reducing the effort, this is increasing the business opportunities too. So these are the main points, and when we go through the digital journey, we will talk about the one or other point later on again. Next slide, please. Before we start now a short video, I want to give you some insights for KSB. KSB is a German company, roughly 15,000 employees located in Germany. And they were really standing in 2018 after having really made good progress and achieved a quite good standard in all the lean methodologies. but they have to think about how to do the next step. They are facing really a dramatically increasing of complexity in their processes, increasing complexity in their product range, and they were thinking about how to do the next step. And they started their digital journey in 2018. They followed more or less the 12 elements you will see later on. And this video shows you, at least on a certain level, how it looks like when it's implemented. Now please start the video.
Before starting again with Klaus' presentation, I would like to remind to our participants that they can submit their question by writing into the window at the bottom of the screen. We have defined a question and answer session at the end of Klaus' presentation in order not to have interruption, so they can receive the answer to their question, but later on. Please ask your question if you want. Sorry for the small interruption. Please, Klaus, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And I think this gave you a good impression about digital transformation looks like when it's implemented. And now the next slide, please, which brings us directly to the digital transformation journey. I will not go on this slide now in each and every element because we will go in these elements in the next minutes. But I want to give you some important statements even in the beginning. When you see this here, you see it's not called steps, it's called building blocks. The reason for that is the one or other building block will not follow exactly the sequence, and you have to keep in mind that you have to do the one or other loop. So it's not always following only one direction. You will see that there are a lot of iterative steps in between. But really important is to not forget one of these building blocks. So it's not mandatory to keep the sequence, but it's mandatory to keep each of these building blocks in mind and take care of it. Next slide, please. Starting with the first building block, the qualification and inspiration. Thank you. Why is this so important? The qualification and inspiration piece is basis to get everyone on the same page, to have here an aligned and common understanding. That is something which is really the most important point when you start your program, when you start your journey. If you are not doing this, you are running the risk that people are discussing about things not understood well. You are discussing about misunderstandings. So it's really a mess when you start your journey by doing something which is just waste. So please ensure that at least to a certain level, everyone understood what's behind digital, what's behind smart, that you get a certain know-how on that, that you have really prepared to your employees. Another important point is in this step, the people must understand why you are doing that. So it's really now your point to underline what's the reason to start your digital journey, why it's so important, why all these people are involved. And by the way, please involve all the stakeholders. More is better than less. And please do not forget stakeholders. So even the works council is important in that phase, because at the end of the day, he has to be part of this transformation. He has to be part of the change. This is really setting the basis, and please do not underestimate this. And before I forget, there's another important question, what you have always to keep in mind. When you do a change in your process, and the digital transformation is a change in your plant, be aware that people have fear. A lot of people just have fear to lose their used standard procedures, and at the end they have fear to lose their job. So please do not underestimate this. This is really an important brick in the wall. Start with a good qualification process, your digital journey. Next step, please. Coming now to the alignment and stakeholders concerning the targets. Next slide, please. You always hear about vision, strategy, organization. Here, from my point of view, it's really very important to set a North Star that people understand, not on a very concrete level, but that people understand where their journey going to. So what are at the end the targets? You saw in the beginning the slide with the minus 50% of costs and minus 50% of the lead time. So it's set on that level some targets. Think about what are the general topics you want to achieve, and then think about what are the important elements and the structure to at the end build your strategy, your vision, and your organization. And one possible solution or one approach could be use the smart factory model, what you see here, based again on the lean enterprise. So you will hear this in each and every discussion. Giancarlo already mentioned that in the beginning. Lean is basis, but then think about all the other aspects, talking about architecture, IT architecture and structure, talking about asset and resource management, process management, leadership in digital age. And you see now just these, let's say, these headlines. On the right, you see some columns combining or aligning these lines: manufacturing analytics, real-time data management. But just to give you an insight how these things are linked together, when you have indeed processes implemented where you have the results out of a production step in real time, the monitoring is in real time, the KPIs are in real time, the employee at the machinery is able really to understand what's going on, if there is a deviation or not, and he really can see this, not only measure it, he sees it. So we have really installed ideal processes. Then it could not be that at the end of the day, the department leader has to decide about a decision. So you have to think about how to deploy now the decision-making process to not lose the speed what you gain on the shop floor at the end in the decision-making or in the approval process. And this is just one example where it's really important to understand how things are linked together and how this is really touching your processes, your organization, and at the end, this is basis for your strategy and organization development. Next slide, please. Talking about smart potentials. Smart, we already talked about the best combination between machineries, employees, processes, and technique. How does this work? Giancarlo already mentioned that, and you saw some pictures. You go really to the Gemba and follow the value stream. So first part is really doing a value stream analysis, doing really that in detail, ask in detail, really until you understand the process, and then you get a clear picture, how does it look like. This is the one part of the story. The other part of the story is follow the business process. The business process is at the end the information flow. See how the information flow is going, where it's done something manually, where are system interruptions, all these things. And then think about where is information flow and value stream combined and where it's dislinked. And out of this, you get a quite good result for your use cases you describe in one-pagers. And in this part, you start to prioritize your use cases. You see here with the 91 potentials you have identified, you come to the 41 clustered use cases. And then you describe the top use cases in one-pagers. Out of this process step, you get, out of this journey step, you get two results. The one are really you describe the potentials, and the other is really that the people understand how the procedure is going to come from 91% potentials to, at the end, the top 3 use cases. And if you involve really the team, the next big benefit is the people understand why these 3 use cases are now the top 3. So you do not have further discussions after detected these. Next slide, please. Coming now to the ranking and road mapping to the Lighthouse project. Next slide, please. We already saw that you have prioritized the use cases. What you have to do in the next step, and this is a quite complex step, is not only to take a look at the identified use cases, you have to think about these use cases in context. Context means, for example, do you have the system in place which are supporting these use cases? To start with a use case which is more or less 100% to an MES system, but the MES system is not up to now not in place, makes no sense. So you have to bring all these things in a context, in an overview. In this first step on a quite high level, just to visualize the dependencies between use cases, systems, and IT architecture and data management. Because at the end of the day, if the databases, the IT basis is missing, you're still having the same issue. You're not able to implement the use case. Next slide, please. Organizational definition. So which impact does this have on your organization? This is something which you will not be able, or I will not be able to answer in one solution. This is really very much linked to your specific company, to your culture, where you are coming from. So it's really important to understand where you are and what you can or how you can organize it. But the important point is think about it, and you have to think about it in different directions. So the one thing is really how looks the organization for the program like? For the program in the analysis phase, for the program when it's coming to the use case road mapping, for the phase when you have identified the first implementations, the pilot implementations, and you have to think about how looks the organization for the rollout like. So it's very important to have all these things in mind, and please build it up in an organizational structure because it's very important in these change processes to keep this organizational backbone, to this organizational framework. In addition to the program organization, at a certain point in the project, you will face the situation that you have to bring the program organization together with your operational organization. So in the day-to-day work, topics are arriving. In the digital transformation project, topics are arriving. In the rollout, topics are arriving. And you have to think about now how to bring these together, that you have at the end of the day all these topics still in your hand. It's not running out of control and everything is more or less somehow controlled. And the challenge for this is not only to do this, but to keep the speed on that. But because you still have the need to ensure that the decisions are made extremely quickly. When it's becoming a very small, a slow process, you will lose the motivation of the participants and the employees. Next slide, please. IT and architecture. Next important brick in the wall. And this is something I clearly recommend start to take here more detailed look in when you have understood what are the real requirements. So knowing the requirements is the important step, even for this topic, for the IT topic, to start with the first or with the important points, not to do everything at the same time. So change and implement target oriented. Take a look where there are the important use cases, where are the pilot areas. When you think about connectivity, think about in which areas I have to ensure the connectivity. So all these things. Remark to this, since we are running to SAP S/4HANA, interfaces are more open. So companies have more freedom when they are thinking about advanced planning systems or manufacturing execution systems. So that is something what you have to keep in mind. Think about where it must be really an IT system, or could it be an IIoT solution? But if you start thinking about this, again, you have to be aware about the requirements, about scalability of the process and the system what you are implementing. So all these things have to brought together. Here, a general statement: don't think in systems. Coming from the processes, think about how the processes could support it in the best way, but then be aware that IT is really not only an enabler. This is something which is at the end of the day a key to implement the processes. So important part of the transformation. That is what I want to underline. But don't think too early in systems. Think about the process, how it should look like, what are the requirements, and then go in the IT and the systems. Next slide, please. Communication strategy and communication strategy. At the end of the day, even the digital roadmap has to do with the change or with the development and the transformation done by people. Digital transformation depends on human, and you have to keep, you have to ensure that the people which are part in this transformation process, and this is more or less everyone in your plant, that they know what's going on, what the status, what the target, and all these things. And communication is not only doing a remote call once a month, or doing a round mail, or an information in the plant newspaper or something like this. Communication has to do with really doing target-oriented and target group-oriented information. A manager needs completely different information as an employee on the shop floor. A planner needs other information and in another frequency than the general manager. And you have to be aware on that. You have to be aware on the frequency, on the content, what is the best tool, the best platform to provide this information. And you have to do a concept out of this. So really important, this part, really do this information, to highlight pilot implementations. If you have reached the next step, highlight this, inform about this. Extremely important to keep the motivation high, to keep the people engaged, and that they are really seeing, okay, the digital journey is something, it's really helping me. And this is something you have to ensure, not only by doing it, you have to do it by informing about that. So this is here the critical point. And again, if it's coming to information, involve everyone, really each and everyone. HR is to be involved, works council, again, involve everyone in this communication process. Extremely important. Next slide, please. The smart use case development. Now, again, talking about the use cases, we have already 2 slides. What's going on now? We have seen that we have developed the use case one-pagers. We have described on a rough level the use cases. We brought them in the context of systems, IT architecture, brought these things together. And now it's coming more to the realization step. And now you will see that you have to think about how could these use cases be slided in, let's say, implementation pieces, and how these implementation pieces stick together. It could be that a part of the use case 1 and the part of the use case 2 was in the prioritization a little bit later. But against the background how these processes are linked together, and against the background on the availability of resources, it would make sense to combine these. So you are now coming from a rough concept in a more detailed concept. You are describing the preconditions, you are describing the dependencies between use cases, systems, all these things. You check the IT architecture and requirements. You check if all the master data, what you need, are available, and if the quality is okay. So you are going now really in detail, and after you have done this in these steps, you say, yes, now it's fine, ready to implement. And then you go really in the next level. Again, it's an iterative process. You go in the detailed concept. Where are the pilots? What's the pilot process? What's the pilot areas? So really going very much in the detail until you, at the end, you are on the concrete measure list. How you doing? What are you doing tomorrow and the day after? So that's the process, how it works. Coming really from a more or less rough level on the use case level, more and more now in the details to this. Next slide, please. When the outcome out of this process is that you need an external supplier or system supplier, then you have now to think about how the selection for this supplier should be done. And here the main sentence is, don't just select one of these suppliers. You have to organize a quite good decision-making process to select the good supplier. Example could be an MES supplier coming from, I don't know, 150 providers at the moment on the market. This is something what we know roughly. You select what would fit to your business requirements, and to your plans. You are starting with this long list by telephone calls, meetings, and so on. Bring it down to the top solution providers. Then you make an information day, remote information day, coming down to the short list, organize the pitch. And now it's very important when you're coming to this level. On the one hand side, when I say keep the structure or ensure that it's well organized, you have to provide forms, evaluation charts, forms for the offer. And for this well-organized structure, keep in mind that all stakeholders are in, especially when the purchasing has to be involved for this process, which is quite important too. And of course, in this selection process, all the stakeholders, which are at the end the users of this topic, they must be part of this selection process too. Thank you. Next slide, please. Then you are starting with the implementation in a pilot area. So we have decided pilot is plant number 1, and it's assembly area number 1. We are going there, think about how it could look like, and you're starting now the implementation. The implementation itself must be really this pilot implementation will really take time and effort. We recommend, because especially for this pilot processes, you will face some troubleshootings, unexpected topics, all these things. Install it with an agile process to ensure that you have quick decision-making processes and quick reaction times. And this is the most important point now in this and in the next step, take care for the debugging. The pilot process must be developed on a level that it's really at the end ready to deploy. So take care on this, really fix the topics which are not running well. Think about, is it really good for the employees? Is it usable what you have implemented? Very important. And this is the first part where you have to think about to install a standardized lessons learned process to ensure continuous optimization later on. And be aware of this even after the pilot period. Be sure that you have to take time for hypercare for the pilot. Next slide, please. When the pilot is running, first the quantities are coming out, the first products are running out, so that's really good news. Then you have to think about how to scale it, how to bring it up, and this is now the next quite critical part, and how to bring up the performance of the machinery of the plants and so on. I think most of the companies are aware on that. Here the point is really when it's running and you're getting more quantities out, volumes are increasing. Make a highlight out of that. Inform about now the process is ramped up, volumes are increasing, so inform about this. And another topic what I want to mention now, I already stated that in the beginning. When you start to design your processes, and you had this in the building block 3 and 4, and you think about how to implement this and how the solution looks like. Be aware what's the target out of this. So scalability, what's really at the end, the process where it has to be implemented. If it's in each and every plant all over the world implemented, is another topic, as you have a topic where it's just in a certain area with some machines. And that is something you have to keep in mind in the very first beginning. Here now it's really just to scale up. Next slide, please. The rollout and transfer period now. Here, the most important point is when you start the rollout, ensure that the rollout process is ready to deploy. And ready to deploy is you can install it in the next plant without starting again with debugging. This is boring people, and if people have to change in a quite quick time, because in a rollout process you have not the same approach as in a pilot plant. The rollout must be done quickly. The implementation in the follower plants must be done quickly and much smoother than in the pilot plants. And to ensure this, really, I just want to underline, ensure that the processes are running, ensure that the processes are debugged. The even more important part now in the rollout is, because the processes should be now really good and they are really running, as I said, we have ensured it's debugged. Don't underestimate the change process now, because now you are coming with more or less a developed process in the plant, and the people have to now get the experience with these new processes. And as said in the beginning, this is a topic for people, new processes, new topics, and they have to change their behavior. Don't underestimate the change process in the phase of the rollout process. Next slide now. So now we are done. We have seen all these 12 building blocks, what we have talked about. To underline each, no, please keep the slide before. All of these 12 building blocks are extremely important. I want to give you a summary. What are the main topics, which from my perspective are the traps you have to avoid, or what are the critical topics. First topic is ensure a clear project setup, clear structure and organization, very important. Alignment and involvement of all stakeholders is key. You must have everyone in. If you have more or less decided on a target process, and then one party, one department, one person, which is in the decision-making process, an important person, and he was not involved, he will kill the process. Not enough awareness on the change management. Keep in mind that people have difficulties with changes. At the end of the day, if something new is coming, they have fear, and you have to take out this fear, and this is an important part of the journey. And processes are to be thought through end-to-end. End-to-end means really from the customer through your plants to the supplier and back. Don't start with just having a focus on a partial block. And last but not least, and this is for me the killer of most of the digital journeys, don't overload your organization. Take your top prioritized use cases, implement them, and then think about what's good for the organization next. Don't overload it with too many topics, too many balls at the same time in the air. I think this is extremely important. And I think we keep it on that. We have 7 minutes to go. I have one slide in addition, but I think it's even more important now to start the discussion.
Okay. So as Klaus said, we can start with the question and answer session. We are a bit close to. We would like to stick to our planned time frame, but of course, we try to answer as much questions as possible. So the first one is, how can I understand the financial impact of a digital roadmap? Klaus, how can we understand that?
This is an extremely good question, and to be answered, this is difficult to answer. When you start the journey on that level, of course, you can make some estimations by thumb or something like that. At the end of the day, there are so many screws you have to take in consideration. Basic architecture, basic setup of IT, all the things which you have not on the radar in the beginning. So really difficult to calculate in the beginning. So in the beginning, this is at least the experience what I had. The companies start by they are trusting in that this journey will bring something to the company. And then, as said, during these building blocks, coming more and more to the details, then you are able to calculate it. And latest, when it's coming to the use case implementations, you will do the calculation in detail, and then you will understand what the impact out of that. But this is really coming more or less like with the processes. In the beginning, it's more or less I trust in the optimization potentials. As soon as it's coming to the implementation, it's coming more and more in euros.
Okay, thanks, Klaus. Next one is whom within the company should be involved in the definition of a digital roadmap? Question mark.
Who means which persons?
Well, I suppose a person and function, I suppose.
As much as possible. To answer very, very general, this digital roadmap, even if it is in the operations, this will touch more or less everyone. It will have an impact on controlling, on HR, on purchasing. So this is something more or less each and every department and employee will impact it. So you have to involve everyone. The question is on which level. They must be informed to a certain level, and at least for the qualification, what I said in the beginning, my recommendation would be invite even more than not enough.
Okay. So the next one, as you probably see, is what are the main internal obstacles to develop a shared digital vision? Also in this case, I suppose the meaning is the internal problem that can come from the resistance to change problem. Yeah. Also the fear someone can face, as you mentioned before.
Yeah, the critical part here is that you are starting with the use cases and so on. On that level, it's not so complex. As soon as you start to describe the linkages between use cases, the processes, the IT systems, the IT architecture, the organization, then it's becoming a little bit more complex. So my recommendation here is, in the beginning, stay on a higher level, really describe it on a higher level, make a more or less helicopter roadmap, something like this, where you describe the dependencies. And when it's coming more and more to the details, then you can take out really your conclusions out of that to make it more concrete. And maybe at the end, you will have more than one slide to describe your digital journey.
Thanks, Klaus. The next one is how frequent should we refresh the roadmap? I suppose the meaning is how frequent shall I can say, redefine our strategy roadmap?
Yeah, this is an important and very good question. And what we recommend is when you are starting the use cases, make it concrete for the next half year, 3/4 of a year, maybe a year. But at least once a year or 2 times a year, you should think about the use cases which are next in the row. So give you an example, when, depending on the size of a company, when you start with the first 3-4 use cases, you are implementing them, don't start the other ones. But when these are beginning to run, so we are coming to the rollout phase or implementation phase, pilot phases, then you can think about the next use cases. And in that step, you have to rethink about if the sequence is still okay, if the digital roadmap is still okay. Indeed, it could happen that a use case, which was number 7 in your prioritization, just is not so important anymore, because with the implementation of use case number 1, 50% of use case number 7 is solved.
So it's almost 6 o'clock. I think, but anyhow, there is still room for one more question. How should I prioritize, difficult to say, the digital streams activities in the digital roadmap?
The prioritization, from the process point of view, do it in the team with all the stakeholders which are important. But at the end of the day, start with these topics which are really giving benefit to the company. So it makes no sense to do something because it's a dogma or something like this, or process looks like very nice. So at the end of the day, think about what are these processes and these use cases which brings the highest benefit to the company, and then you start with them. That's the best to do the prioritization.
Thanks, Klaus. And since we are lean thinker, so we would like to stick to the time frame. We started at 5 o'clock and now we can finish at 6 o'clock. I would like just to share with you some takeaways of this webinar. Of course, these are my personal, let's say, takeaway. Everybody, each of you, I suppose, has his specific takeaways. But just to, as a food for thought, I would say, I will see at least 3 blocks, let's call them blocks. The first one on properly the process excellences, if you want, but to the combining of digital and lean, and starting from the strategy and processes in order to identify something that is really useful for our competitiveness. The second block is more related to the idea that the digital, properly said. That means, as Klaus has, I feel, very clearly explained, the interlink between the use cases and the IT architecture that must be investigated in order to be able to really implement our solution. And the integrated connectivity landscape, that means no more the hierarchical structure, but more a network structure, let's say. And finally, from the point of view of the process of the management of change, I think that Klaus has given us many suggestions, but the communication strategy, how I can explain to the person where I'm going to, and why, and so on and so forth. Plus, but it is not a very sequential process, but is an iterative process with different modules that must be combined in order to have an effective result. So I hope that you share with me more or less this lesson learned. I think now the webinar is finished. Again, many thanks to Klaus for his experience, that he has shared with us his experiences, many years experiences, if I can say. And I hope that you get fruitful information from this webinar, and maybe also some ideas that you can implement from tomorrow in your company. And for any information, of course, both Klaus and I are available to you. Thank you so much, and see the next hour webinar. Thank you.